A conscientious objector, or CO for short, is any individual who has claimed the right to refuse to perform military service. You can find COs in almost every country that practices conscription, which is otherwise known as drafting. Most COs are fundamentalists like Quakers, Mennonites, Amish, and Jehovah's Witnesses who object to the notion of war on religious grounds. Although, it is still possible to claim CO status on a purely philosophical perspective, as determined by the 1965 Supreme Court case, United States v. Seeger, which ruled that COs do not necessarily have to believe in a supreme being. It was believed for many years after Christ that war, even war to protect the innocent, was against Christian values. It wasn't until Constantine the Great started to incorporate Christianity into his armies, and theologians like Augustine of Hippo started to take stances on justified violence, that the idea of a just war came about. Augustine in particular believed that Christians should practice pacifism, and he also maintained that to be peaceful during times of grave wrongdoings is sinful. The belief of the fundamentalists still continues to be a source of moral conflict for many people who are eligible for the draft. Many people applied as conscientious objectors during the very unpopular Vietnam War to avoid being sent into combat. Historically, if you were found to be a true objector, you would be assigned to another job that still helped the war effort, but that was not directly related to the fighting. However, if you applied for CO status and were denied by your local draft board, then you were forced to enlist in the Army or face a 2-year prison sentence. Many of the 300,000 young men who were denied deferment actually opted for the latter option rather than fighting in the war. During the Vietnam War, about 170,000 men were accepted as COs, and over 600,000 illegally evaded the draft, which included as many as 70,000 that fled to Canada or other countries. These men who fled during the war were later given amnesty to return to the United States by President Carter. President Nixon, once elected into office, abolished the draft and turned the military into a purely voluntary service, although it did not change the unpopular opinion of the war. Becoming a conscientious objector is often a lengthy and complex process that may involve writing an essay, and will usually involve coming in front of a panel of experts who get to decide whether or not your belief actually prevents you from fighting in the war. Some of the questions that this panel may ask include: how and when did you decide against the military service? Why can't you arrange the military with your conscience? What prohibits you from serving in the military? Do you fear having to fight or to use force? Do you want to abolish the Army? What do you think about the phrase, "We have the Army to defend ourselves, not to kill others"? What would you do if you were attacked? How do you feel when you see others attacked? Now tell me, what is violence exactly? Would you rather experience losses than to use force? What do your beliefs say? Would you describe yourself as a pacifist? What basic values, besides objecting to violence, do you have? What entity gives you the certainty that your thinking and your feelings are right? Why didn't you just go to prison if your conscience is so strong? Why didn't you use medical reasons to avoid military service? What do you actually do to further peace, or is your attitude the only peaceful thing about you? Who is in charge of defending your children in case of armed conflict? Do you live your ethical principles inside your family? What books do you read? What do you demand from yourself? Are you merely a leader, a follower, or a loner? You can still apply for CO status in the United States when you sign up for the draft. Conscription is still required for all 18 to 25-year-old men and is regulated by the United States Selective Service. As of 2007, 405 men had requested CO status since the start of the Iraq War in 2002, and 179 of these requests have been granted. Additionally, about 20,000 soldiers have gone absent without official leave, or AWOL, and have been classified as deserters. Some still flee to Canada, where they must apply for refugee status in order to remain there legally, but only about 50 people have done so.